"You people don't usually fly first class, do you?" That's what she heard. 6 words, drenched in arrogance and subtle racism, hurled like a casual remark at 35,000 feet. But those 6 words were all it took. Meet Cassandra R. Hamilton, black, brilliant billionaire CEO, who boarded an Emirates A380 expecting luxury, and instead walked straight into humiliation, denied her pre-ordered gourmet meal, ignored by staff, targeted, not served. But what happened just 9 minutes later shocked everyone on board. And what came after? Well, karma had a few powerful lessons waiting in the wings. Stay with us, because this story is about power, prejudice, and the price of underestimating the wrong woman. Cassandra Regina Hamilton was no stranger to the finer things in life. As the chief executive officer of Everglow Tech, a powerful software security company that had just made the Forbes list for innovative developments, she had worked tirelessly to climb the ranks in a notoriously cutthroat tech industry. She often recalled the time she spent in her early 20s, scribbling code in a tiny apartment with only an outdated laptop and sheer will fueling her ambitions. From those humble origins, she had built an empire that now boasted a global presence, with offices in New York, London, Tokyo, and Sao Paulo. It was a chilly morning in late October when Cassandra arrived at John F. Kennedy International Airport. The hustle and bustle of travelers surrounded her, a swirl of tired eyes, excited voices, and anxious glances at departure screens. Yet despite the crowded terminal, Cassandra carried herself with a cool, confident air. She was known for her graceful composure, an attribute that had earned her not just the admiration of her peers, but the respect of thousands of employees who looked up to her. She wore a tailored Alexander McQueen suit in a deep, exquisite navy. Her short, elegant hair was trimmed with precision, accentuating her refined features. One might suspect that Cassandra had meticulously planned every aspect of her appearance, from the designer carry-on luggage to the pristine black Louboutin heels that clicked softly on the polished floor. She liked to think of her outward presentation as an extension of her brand, flawless and formidable. Her flight was a direct one from New York to Dubai, aboard a massive Emirates Airbus A380. Everglow Tech was in the middle of a major expansion project, and Cassandra was heading to the Middle East to finalize negotiations on a venture capital deal that promised to catapult her company to new heights. The significance of the trip was monumental. A single slip in her negotiations could cost billions in potential revenue. She needed this journey to be smooth, from takeoff to touchdown. For Cassandra, traveling first class was a regular occurrence. She had grown accustomed to the plush seats, the sumptuous meals, and the array of exclusive amenities that came with the territory. Her personal assistant had prearranged every detail, from her choice of champagne, Veuve Clicquot La Grande Dame, to the personalized in-flight menu catered by a Michelin-starred chef. Indeed, Cassandra had requested a special meal, a gourmet vegetarian selection featuring truffle-infused risotto, fresh seasonal vegetables, and a dessert of rich Belgian chocolate mousse. However, as she checked in and made her way through the airport, she felt a subtle tension in the air. Perhaps it was just her imagination, or maybe it was the undeniable undercurrent of stress that coursed through the world's busiest airports. Either way, she chose to brush off the feeling. After all, nothing particularly unpleasant had happened yet. She had priority check-in, breezed through security, and was soon escorted to the exclusive first-class lounge. Inside, she sank into a plush leather armchair overlooking the runway. She sipped on her customary chai latte sweetened with a hint of honey, tapping casually on her phone to review the day's stock reports. Her company was riding high, shares skyrocketing, new investors clamoring to get on board. Cassandra allowed herself a small smile. Years of late-night coding and high-stakes deals had finally paid off. Her name was now synonymous with innovation, success, and resilience, especially as a black woman in tech, a realm where underrepresentation was rampant. Soon her flight was announced. Gathering her carry-on, she strode to the gate where an Emirates representative, clad in the signature red hat and white veil, welcomed her warmly. Upon entering the plane, Cassandra marveled at the sheer opulence of the first-class suite. She had been on Emirates flights countless times, but each new journey still brought a hint of awe. The private cabins with sliding doors, the gold-plated embellishments, the widescreen entertainment system that promised a library of music, movies, and TV shows at her fingertips. When she took her seat, everything seemed to be in perfect order. A flight attendant approached her with a polite smile, offered to store her coat, and inquired if she would like a welcome beverage. Cassandra ordered a glass of sparkling water with lemon, an uncharacteristically modest choice for her. She felt a desire to keep her mind clear and sharp for the negotiation waiting on the other end of the flight. Yet, as the plane powered down the runway and soared into the sky, Cassandra would soon discover that not everything aboard this luxury flight would align with her carefully laid plans. And when events began to unravel, they would do so in the most unexpected and dramatic ways. Once the aircraft leveled off at cruising altitude, the flight crew began their usual service routine. Cassandra rested her eyes for a few moments, enjoying the gentle hum of the engines. She found solace in air travel. Time away from phones, incessant notifications, and endless meetings could be a strange form of therapy. However, the first glitch in her carefully orchestrated world appeared when one of the cabin crew members, a tall, stern-faced woman named Ingrid, came to collect Cassandra's meal preferences. Before takeoff, Cassandra had double-checked that her special vegetarian meal with truffle risotto was listed on her ticket. But Ingrid seemed to stare blankly at the seat assignment, then at Cassandra. "I apologize, Miss Hamilton," Ingrid said, her tone strictly professional but devoid of warmth. "We do not appear to have a record of a special meal request under your name." Cassandra raised an eyebrow, her voice calmly controlled. "I made that request over a month ago. It was confirmed by my assistant and by the airline's booking system. Could you please check again?" The flight attendant's lips thinned as she forced a polite smile. "Of course. Let me see if there's been any mix-up." Moments later, Ingrid returned with a perplexed expression. "I'm sorry, Miss Hamilton, but there is no vegetarian meal designated for you in our system. We can offer you a standard meal, perhaps the beef tenderloin or the grilled salmon if that suits you." Cassandra felt a flicker of annoyance. She had carefully organized her dietary requests, especially due to a mild shellfish allergy. But more than that, it was her personal preference. Being accustomed to top-tier treatment, Cassandra wasn't one to accept mistakes lightly, especially mistakes that impacted her comfort. "Please, check with the head purser. My assistant confirmed it, and Emirates usually never fails on such requests. There might be an oversight. I'm certain it can be remedied," Cassandra replied, trying to keep her tone neutral, though her annoyance was rising. Ingrid nodded curtly. "Very well, I'll speak to the purser." A subtle tension fell over the first-class cabin. The other passengers, mostly executives, celebrities, or wealthy travelers, continued sipping champagne, watching their in-flight screens, or reading magazines. But Cassandra could sense curious glances flickering in her direction. She wasn't sure if she was imagining it, but she felt an undercurrent, some intangible vibe that she was being measured or judged. Perhaps it was the way Ingrid's face had barely concealed a hint of disdain, or maybe it was her own sensitivity to having her legitimate request disregarded. Minutes ticked by, and Cassandra tried to refocus on her business proposals. She reminded herself that she had a looming meeting with a group of Middle Eastern investors who were famously particular about business etiquette. She couldn't afford to let a missing meal unravel her composure. But something felt off. She glanced around to see the other first-class passengers having their preferences meticulously attended to. She overheard a flight attendant listing fine wines to a passenger nearby, describing each vintage with poetic flair. Another passenger was offered a special type of caviar that Cassandra knew was notoriously expensive. The level of service around her seemed impeccable. Yet for her, the simplest request, a meal guaranteed on a first-class ticket, remained unsatisfied. Finally, Ingrid returned, this time with the head purser, a gentleman named Raj who wore a friendly smile that didn't entirely reach his eyes. "Miss Hamilton, We're terribly sorry about the inconvenience. Raj began, bowing slightly. We've double-checked the system, and there seems to have been some sort of oversight. The catering department has no record of a vegetarian meal for you. In the back of her mind, Cassandra fought the urge to snap. She didn't want to play the race card prematurely, nor did she want to come across as an entitled VIP. But from her experience, she couldn't ignore a nagging suspicion. She had faced subtle discrimination numerous times in her career. Little moments like suspicious glances at black-tie galas, waiters offering the wine list to her white subordinates, or even security guards at exclusive events double-checking her invitation while letting others glide by. Nevertheless, Cassandra took a breath, determined to handle this with dignity. Surely there must be a spare vegetarian meal. In first class, you must have extras for last-minute passenger requests or if something goes amiss, yes? Raj shook his head sympathetically. We carry only a limited number of special meals. However, we might be able to modify one of the standard options. The salmon can be served without the fish, and we can arrange extra vegetables. Cassandra's eyes flared. I'm allergic to shellfish and prefer to avoid fish entirely. My meal should have been here. This is a first-class cabin on Emirates, which is known for impeccable catering. How can you not have a single vegetarian entree available? Her voice was controlled but edged with frustration. Raj quickly tried to placate her. We fully understand your concern. Let me see if there's anything we can do. Maybe speak with the chef to whip up something off-menu. Cassandra exhaled. I'd appreciate that. Yet the moment the purser retreated, Ingrid reappeared, apparently unaware that Raj had promised to find a solution. Miss Hamilton, I'm afraid our chef has confirmed that our final count of vegetarian meals was allocated to other passengers who checked in prior to you. You'll have to make do with our standard menu. Cassandra blinked, stunned by the directness. Before she could protest, Ingrid offered a small, rigid smile and excused herself, leaving Cassandra with a slow-burning anger that threatened to erupt. She had never been spoken to so dismissively by cabin crew in first class before. Something was definitely wrong here, and it went beyond a mere glitch in the system. In that moment, Cassandra resolved to escalate the issue once they landed. If the airline could not rectify the situation mid-flight, there would be repercussions. She was a powerful woman in the tech industry, but she also had connections in finance, media, and beyond. With a single phone call, she could start a ripple effect that would reach the airline's corporate offices. For now, though, she tried to keep calm, reminding herself that her real fight lay in negotiating billions, not in bickering with flight staff. As Cassandra glanced out the window, she was reminded of how far she'd come. She had been raised in a modest neighborhood in Detroit, a place often overshadowed by its economic struggles. Her parents, Linda and Mark Hamilton, were hard-working individuals who never let her forget the importance of education and ambition. Even as a child, Cassandra had dreamed of reaching the highest echelons of success, of one day commandeering her own destiny. She recalled the many times she faced microaggressions and overt racism. In high school, a teacher once told her she was better suited for trade school than computer programming. Instead of letting that statement deter her, she used it as fuel. She studied, fought for scholarships, and eventually secured a place at MIT, where she graduated top of her class. Her first job was at a small cybersecurity firm, where she quickly realized her potential. Barely 2 years into that role, she left to start her own company, Everglow Tech. At first, it was an uphill battle. Nights of living on ramen noodles, sleeping in the office, doing every menial task herself. But once her first big contract was signed with a major financial institution, investors poured in, and the company's growth skyrocketed. Decades later, here she was, a self-made millionaire, or more accurately, a budding billionaire, whose story of grit and resilience had become an inspiration for young women of color around the globe. So how was it that a person of her status, traveling on a first-class ticket, was being denied basic courtesy? Cassandra sighed. Sometimes all the accomplishments in the world couldn't shield you from ignorance or systems that were stacked against you. Amid her reverie, she noticed the flight crew serving the meal trays to other first-class passengers. She saw perfectly plated dishes, garnished with microgreens, delivered alongside high-end champagne. Her stomach rumbled slightly. She hadn't eaten all day, having rushed from one meeting to the next before heading to the airport. The knowledge that her carefully arranged vegetarian meal was in some catering facility or was never prepared at all began to irritate her more with each minute. Just then, Raj reappeared, wearing an apologetic expression. He carefully placed a tray on Cassandra's table. On it was a hastily prepared dish of plain penne pasta, topped with a sprinkling of wilted spinach, alongside a small bowl of undressed lettuce. "We managed to find a workaround, Miss Hamilton," he offered, careful to avoid meeting her gaze. "I hope this is acceptable under the circumstances. Please let me know if there's anything else we can do." Cassandra looked at the dish, unimpressed. "This wasn't what I ordered." Raj hesitated, then nodded. "I understand your disappointment, Miss Hamilton. We sincerely apologize. Unfortunately, it's the best we can do on this flight." In that moment, Ingrid returned, catching sight of the makeshift meal. A strange half-smile flickered across her face. "Thank you, Raj," she said. Turning to Cassandra, she added, "I trust you'll find that sufficient." Cassandra pursed her lips. She glanced around at the other passengers, who were enjoying a feast of steak, salmon, and caviar. "I'll make do," she said curtly. Ingrid's eyes flicked to Cassandra's, and there was a brief moment of something akin to smugness, or perhaps just impatience. Then the attendant pivoted away, leaving Cassandra with an uneasy feeling in the pit of her stomach, and not just from hunger. Despite her frustration, Cassandra forced herself to eat a few bites of the bland pasta. As she did, she noticed Ingrid and another crew member whispering and casting sidelong glances in her direction. Or perhaps it was her imagination. The stress of the day was catching up to her, and her nerves were frayed from the incomplete rest the night before. She had a pressing negotiation to prepare for, and instead of reviewing her documents or clarifying the finer details of her contract, she found herself stewing in silent indignation about something as trivial, yet symbolically huge, as a botched meal. After the dinner service concluded, the cabin lights dimmed to signal nighttime rest. Some passengers reclined into their fully flat beds, while others pulled out laptops or tablets, continuing their work under soft reading lights. Cassandra decided to use this time to run through her pitch deck on her tablet. She tried to focus, but the memory of Ingrid's dismissive tone kept tugging at her thoughts. It was an old wound for Cassandra, one that always stung no matter how much success she had. She felt a surge of defiance course through her veins. This was no ordinary airline mishap. She sensed it was personal. She had spent a lifetime breaking down barriers, and she had learned that prejudice could take many forms, some blatant, some subtle. She recalled instances in her past, like the time a junior employee had asked her to fetch coffee during a major tech conference, assuming she was just someone's assistant. Or when a group of venture capitalists once credited her company's achievements to a male colleague. Though Cassandra was the architect behind every strategy, now, on this luxurious flight, she found herself once again confronting a scenario where she was singled out or treated differently. Whether it was direct racism or another unspoken bias, she didn't know yet. But she was determined not to let it pass unchallenged. She reached for her phone, forgetting momentarily that the device should be in airplane mode. She flipped on the Wi-Fi function and tried connecting to the in-flight network, scanning for a signal that could at least let her send a message to her assistant or make a note of the situation. Surprisingly, the in-flight Wi-Fi wasn't functioning as smoothly as usual. Another inconvenience. Perhaps the plane's system was malfunctioning, or too many passengers were attempting to stream content simultaneously. Gritting her teeth, she stood up and walked to the small lounge area near the front of the first-class cabin. She needed a moment away from her seat, a chance to think clearly. The lounge was tastefully designed, soft leather sofas, discreet lighting, and a small bar stocked with top-shelf liquor. Rarely did first-class passengers ever congregate there, so it was often quiet. As she sat down, Cassandra began drafting a plan in her head. She would speak to Emirates customer service upon landing, clarify the nature of this mishap, and ensure that measures were taken to rectify it. If it turned out Ingrid had shown prejudice, Cassandra would speak out, and Cassandra had the clout to make such a complaint resonate up the airline's chain of command. She wouldn't rest until she received a formal apology, and perhaps some measure of accountability. Yet even as she resolved to fight back, Cassandra sensed that there was a deeper meaning to this moment, almost as though fate was testing her. She was about to close one of the biggest deals of her life. Was this an omen of things to come? She tried to shake off the superstitious notion. In the lounge, she paused to admire the sky through a small window, miles of nothingness stretching beyond. She allowed herself a moment of calm in that silent emptiness, reminding herself that she had faced bigger challenges before. Surely she could handle this. Little did she know, the meal incident was only the tip of an iceberg. A more dramatic series of events was lurking in the shadows, ready to unfold. The flight proceeded through the night, crossing time zones and continents. Cassandra managed to doze off for a couple of hours, but her sleep was restless. About 5 hours into the flight, she was awoken by a soft chime and the gentle glow of the overhead lights. It was time for a scheduled break in the cabin for a mid-flight snack or refreshment. Cassandra checked the flight tracker. Still more than 7 hours to go until Dubai. She tried connecting to the in-flight Wi-Fi again, and this time it seemed to work, albeit slowly. She quickly typed a message to her personal assistant, Lisa, summarizing the situation. "Lisa, there's an issue with my special meal on the flight to Dubai. Cabin crew is dismissive. Please contact Emirates ASAP and get me the name of the cabin crew manager. This is unacceptable. I suspect I'm being singled out. More details later." Once the message finally sent, Cassandra decided to stretch her legs. As she made her way down the aisle, she caught sight of Ingrid once more. The attendant was in hushed conversation with 2 other flight attendants, and though Cassandra couldn't make out their words, she had the distinct impression that she was their topic of discussion. Her phone vibrated softly in her hand. A reply from Lisa. Cassandra stepped aside to read it. "Understood, Miss Hamilton. Emirates says your request was in the system. They claim the meal was loaded. They can't explain the discrepancy. They're contacting the purser on board now. Keep me posted." Cassandra's pulse quickened. So the airline's own records showed her request. That made it official. The meal was loaded onto the plane. Why then had Cassandra been denied? Summoning her courage, she marched up to Ingrid. "Excuse me, can you direct me to the purser, please?" Ingrid startled, almost as though she'd been caught doing something wrong. "He's at the back, attending to a passenger," she replied curtly. "You can wait in your seat until he's free." Cassandra felt her temper ignite. "I'd like to speak to him now." "Ma'am, if you could just—" Cassandra cut her off, her tone calm but ice cold. "I'm not used to being spoken to in this manner, especially not in first class. I'd appreciate it if you fetched him, now." Ingrid drew a sharp breath, face blanching with suppressed anger. She disappeared behind a curtain. A minute later, Raj emerged, wearing a concerned expression. "Miss Hamilton, is everything all right?" he asked. "I just received confirmation from my assistant," Cassandra replied, her voice clipped. "She's spoken to Emirates Corporate. They have records that my vegetarian meal was loaded onto this flight, so please explain to me why I was told otherwise and served a substandard dish. I'd like the truth." Raj glanced around, cautious that other passengers might overhear. "Miss Hamilton, I truly apologize. There seems to be a misunderstanding. The meal was on board, yes, but the passenger in seat 2A also requested a last-minute vegetarian meal. We had only one to spare, so we assigned it to that passenger when you didn't check in early." Cassandra's eyebrow arched. "But my meal was arranged months in advance." "Yes," Raj admitted, "but the other passenger specifically mentioned dietary restrictions and was persistent. There was confusion about who had priority. Frankly, Miss Hamilton, it seems we made a mistake. I take full responsibility. I'll be filing a report on this." Before Cassandra could respond, a scuffle broke out in the corridor behind Raj. One of the flight attendants was trying to calm another passenger, who was raising his voice. "What do you mean the lounge is closed? I paid for my ticket. I'm entitled." Cassandra couldn't see the man's face, but she could hear the aggression in his tone. Raj turned to look, conflicted about whether to continue speaking to Cassandra or attend to the other passenger. Sensing the urgency, Cassandra gestured for him to go handle the commotion. "We'll finish this conversation later," she stated, her voice dripping with implied authority. As Raj hurried away, Cassandra stepped back, deciding it best not to add further chaos to the situation. She saw Ingrid whispering frantically to another attendant. Something was happening on this flight, something that went beyond just a single meal. The tension was palpable, a simmering pot on the brink of boiling over. Tapping her foot anxiously, Cassandra glanced at her watch. Exactly 9 minutes had passed since her confrontation with Ingrid. 9 minutes in which she felt her patience drain away. 9 minutes that would define the rest of this flight, and, unbeknownst to her, reshape her own life in the days to come. Cassandra had always been known for her decisive nature. Whether it was forging multi-million-dollar deals or steering her company through a crisis, she possessed a remarkable ability to act swiftly and effectively. Now, with tensions high and her sense of injustice peaking, that very quality was about to manifest itself in a way that would stun the entire first-class cabin. She carefully observed Ingrid's body language. The flight attendant seemed anxious, constantly glancing over her shoulder at Cassandra while trying to soothe the disgruntled passenger in the corridor. Something about Ingrid's demeanor confirmed Cassandra's suspicion that this was more than a routine oversight. Feeling a surge of adrenaline course through her, Cassandra decided she'd had enough. She pressed the call button above her seat. Another flight attendant, a younger woman named Liana, answered it. "How may I assist you, Miss Hamilton?" Liana asked politely. "I'd like to speak to the pilot," Cassandra said, her voice calm but resolute. Liana's eyes widened. "Pardon me? You heard me correctly. I'd like to speak to the pilot. I have a matter of urgent importance to discuss." Cassandra was well aware this was an unusual request. Protocol dictated that the pilot generally did not meet with passengers mid-flight, unless it was an emergency. But if there was any flight where protocol might be bent, it was a long-haul Emirates first-class journey with a VIP passenger. And Cassandra, being who she was, had no qualms about using her influence to get what she wanted. "I'm not sure the captain," Liana began, but Cassandra cut her off. "Listen carefully. This is a matter of significant concern to the airline. If the pilot refuses, I understand. But please inform him who I am and let him decide if he'd like to risk ignoring me." Liana's expression flickered with uncertainty. She nodded, then disappeared toward the cockpit. Meanwhile, Cassandra typed a brief message to her assistant. "No resolution yet. I'm going to escalate. Check if you can reach Emirates HQ and let them know. Also, connect with my PR team. If I don't get satisfaction, we'll make this public." A few minutes later, Liana returned, a hesitant look on her face. "The pilot is occupied with flight operations, but the first officer will be out to speak with you momentarily, Miss Hamilton." Cassandra nodded, satisfied. She was determined to address this matter swiftly and decisively. She may have overreacted. Her rational mind nudged her about the potential ramifications. But her pride was wounded, and a part of her that had endured countless slights for years felt an unquenchable need for immediate justice. It took another 5 minutes before the first officer, a middle-aged man named George Anderson, emerged from the cockpit. He approached Cassandra with professionalism etched into every line of his face. "Miss Hamilton, I'm George Anderson, the first officer. I understand you have a concern." Cassandra explained the entire situation, the confirmed vegetarian meal that vanished, Ingrid's dismissive attitude, the sense of being singled out. She emphasized her status as a high-profile corporate figure and how this incident could damage the airline's reputation if it wasn't addressed properly. Anderson listened intently, nodding in all the right places. I see, Miss Hamilton. I apologize on behalf of Emirates for any inconvenience caused. We hold ourselves to high service standards, and this incident is clearly below those standards. However, I must respectfully point out that the crew is doing their best under the circumstances. Could we resolve this after landing? I promise you a thorough investigation. Cassandra squared her shoulders. I appreciate your concern, Mr. Anderson, but I've already tried resolving it with the crew. The purser has been apologetic, but certain members of the staff have displayed an unacceptable attitude. I'm requesting immediate action. Failing that, I'll have no choice but to contact my legal team. Though George Anderson maintained a calm facade, he looked slightly rattled. Lawsuits, especially from someone as influential as Cassandra, were the last thing the airline needed. Miss Hamilton, I will speak directly with the purser and investigate your claim right now. I'll do my utmost to rectify the situation before we land. Thank you, Cassandra replied. That's all I ask. Once Anderson left to confer with Raj, Cassandra let out a slow exhale. She was conscious that her anger was overshadowing her usual diplomacy, but she couldn't help it. She felt disrespected, and it stung more acutely than usual, perhaps because she had come to associate first-class travel with dignity. For her, it was a symbol of success, of victory over years of adversity. To be humiliated in that very space where she expected better was galling. Shortly after her conversation with the first officer, Cassandra noticed Raj and Ingrid in heated dialogue near the galley. She could only catch snippets of words. Why did you say that? I didn't realize. She's threatening. I'm sorry, but it was enough to confirm that Ingrid was in hot water. Cassandra watched as Ingrid threw a glance in her direction, her face twisted with a mix of fear and anger. Raj appeared to be trying to calm her, but Ingrid pulled away, marched past the seats, and out of Cassandra's line of sight. A few minutes later, Raj appeared at Cassandra's seat, his expression grim. Miss Hamilton, I've spoken to Mr. Anderson. I want to apologize once again. It appears that there's been a lapse in the service provided to you. We're going to file an immediate report. I assure you this is not how Emirates treats its first-class passengers, or any passenger for that matter. Thank you, Cassandra replied. And about Ingrid? Raj hesitated, trying to maintain composure. We're currently addressing her conduct internally. I assure you she'll face disciplinary procedures if it's found she deliberately withheld the meal or otherwise discriminated against you. Cassandra's lips thinned into a line. Understood. Yet, despite Raj's conciliatory words, the tension on board didn't dissipate. In fact, it only escalated. Cassandra noticed that Ingrid had effectively gone missing from the first-class area, replaced by other attendants. The passenger who had been shouting earlier now paced up and down the aisle, complaining loudly about how he was going to post a scathing review online for not getting immediate access to the lounge. And as if on cue, the plane jolted slightly, turbulence setting in. The seatbelt sign flickered on. Cassandra felt her heart pound. She wasn't normally uneasy about flying, but everything in the air seemed heightened by the drama unfolding. Somewhere in the back of her mind, a whisper of regret emerged. She wondered if she had pushed too far, too fast. Would it have been better to wait until landing, handle things discreetly through her usual channels? Possibly. But it was too late now. She had made her stand, and there was no turning back. As the turbulence subsided and the flight settled into a calmer altitude, Cassandra noticed the flight attendants scurrying about, refilling drinks and checking on passengers. She tapped her watch, counting the minutes since she had demanded immediate action. 9 minutes had gone by, a random but strangely resonant number. 9 minutes, a short span, yet enough time for a person's entire life to change. A beep alerted Cassandra to a new email on her phone. It was from Lisa. The subject line read, Urgent, Emirates Corporate Response. Cassandra opened it swiftly. Miss Hamilton, I just received a call from Emirates Corporate. They've apologized profusely, acknowledging there was a meal for you on board. It was definitely loaded as per their catering records. They're launching an immediate internal inquiry. Given your status and the severity of the issue, they are willing to take action against the crew if this is proven to be negligence or discrimination. I also got a message from your legal team. They're on standby for any next steps you'd like to take." Cassandra felt a wave of grim satisfaction. She knew she held immense sway in the corporate world, and now that muscle was being flexed. But a tiny voice in her head questioned whether she was leaping to the nuclear option too quickly. The answer, however, was overshadowed by her indignation. She composed a short reply. "Thank you, Lisa. Keep the legal team on alert. Also, connect with my PR rep. Emirates Corporate might try to manage the situation. Tell them we want a formal apology. Let's see how it plays out once we land." C. Before she could press send, her phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from an unknown number. The text simply read, "Apologies for the trouble. Please know that certain staff might have personal biases. I overheard them mention your background. This is bigger than a missing meal. I can't say more right now, but be aware." Cassandra felt the hairs on the back of her neck stand on end. She looked around the cabin, wondering who could have sent that message. Could one of the other passengers be eavesdropping? Or maybe a sympathetic crew member? The prospect that Ingrid or someone else on the staff might be harboring racial bias was not shocking, but to see it hinted at so directly by a mystery messenger gave Cassandra goosebumps. Her anger flared anew. She typed back, "Who is this? Please identify yourself." But there was no immediate response. It happened in a whirlwind, an event that would be the talk of corporate circles, aviation forums, and social media for weeks. Cassandra Hamilton, in a single decisive move, effectively ensured that every member of the first-class cabin crew was terminated from their duties, at least temporarily. Mid-flight, Cassandra received a call on the in-flight satellite phone. It was from David Robinson, an executive vice president at Emirates who had been alerted by Lisa about the growing crisis. Cassandra stepped into a private corner to take the call, speaking in hushed but intense tones. "Miss Hamilton, I'm so sorry for the trouble. I've personally reviewed the catering reports. Your meal was definitely loaded. This is a clear violation of our service protocols. After speaking to the flight purser over a secure line, it appears there may have been active interference by a crew member preventing your meal from reaching you." Cassandra closed her eyes, her pulse pounding. Active interference. "Is that confirmed?" she asked quietly. "There's a strong indication, yes," David replied. "The purser has identified the staff involved. We're prepared to take immediate corrective action." Cassandra's chest tightened. And what does immediate corrective action mean in this context? David hesitated. "We can remove them from service pending a formal investigation. However, normally that wouldn't happen mid-flight. We can't exactly land and disembark them. But rest assured, once you arrive in Dubai, we'll take swift measures." A swirl of emotions danced through Cassandra's mind. Anger, satisfaction. Then, a flicker of doubt. Would this be an overreach? But the memory of Ingrid's dismissive sneer and the cryptic text message about personal biases reaffirmed her position. "Do it," Cassandra said firmly. "Take them off duty now. Let them know that once this plane lands, their employment with Emirates, at least in relation to my flight, is terminated." David paused. "I'll do it, Miss Hamilton. For you, I'll ensure they are relieved of their duties immediately after landing. We'll see that you have a new set of attendants waiting when you exit the plane, along with a formal apology from the airline." "Thank you," she said, voice trembling with a mixture of vindication and lingering anger. When Cassandra ended the call, she felt a wave of adrenaline wash over her. She had never used her influence so directly, so drastically. But the decision was made. She allowed herself a moment to steady her emotions, to remind herself why she was doing this. She wasn't just fighting for a missing meal. She was fighting for respect, for equality, for the countless times she or others like her had been overlooked or discriminated against. Within minutes, the staff in the first-class cabin received word from the cockpit. Cassandra watched Raj speak to Ingrid and the other attendants in low, urgent tones. The color drained from Ingrid's face, and she backed away, tears gathering at the corner of her eyes. Another attendant shook his head in disbelief, while yet another seemed to slump in resignation. The entire first-class cabin was about to experience an abrupt shift in atmosphere. As news spread that the first-class cabin crew would be relieved of their duties upon landing, confusion and chaos took hold. A hush fell over the usually serene first-class cabin. Passengers sensed something monumental was happening. Some whispered among themselves, speculating. Others craned their necks to see if they could glean any information from the tight-lipped flight attendants. It was Ingrid's reaction, however, that grabbed Cassandra's attention. Ingrid approached her seat, tears brimming in her eyes. Cassandra braced herself for an outburst or an argument. Instead, Ingrid knelt slightly to meet Cassandra's gaze, speaking in a trembling whisper. "Miss Hamilton, I understand you've called for my dismissal." She paused, swallowing hard. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. It was wrong of me. I shouldn't have said what I did." Cassandra's jaw tightened. "What did you say exactly?" Ingrid glanced around, ensuring no one else was listening. Then she let out a shaky breath. "I told the other crew members that you probably didn't belong here, that you likely got your money through unscrupulous means. I made assumptions because you're black and young and successful, and it rubbed me the wrong way. I know it's not an excuse. I'm ashamed, truly." Cassandra's heart pounded in her ears. Hearing Ingrid speak those words confirmed every suspicion she had about discrimination. It was more blatant than she had imagined. The meal fiasco was just a symptom of Ingrid's prejudice. Cassandra held Ingrid's gaze, her expression stony. She felt a surge of conflicting emotions, anger at the blatant racism, a strange sense of relief at the honesty, and a glimmer of empathy at the sight of Ingrid's tears. "You cost yourself your own job," Cassandra said quietly. "I appreciate your apology, but you need to understand the harm you caused. I've spent my entire life fighting assumptions just like yours." Ingrid nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. I know. If I could take it back, I would. I've worked for Emirates for years and I've never acted like this before. I don't know why." Cassandra cut her off. "I think you do know why. You just said it. You had a bias." With that, Ingrid lowered her head. She stood shakily and made her way to the galley, leaving Cassandra feeling both vindicated and unsettled. On one hand, Ingrid's confession validated her decision. On the other, it gnawed at her conscience. Had she become a villain in Ingrid's story by orchestrating her firing so swiftly? Tense minutes turned into hours as the plane continued its route. Eventually, the cabin crew retreated almost entirely from the first-class section. A couple of staff members from business class stepped in to perform the minimal duties required, offering Cassandra polite if distant service. When the plane finally touched down at Dubai International Airport, Cassandra felt an almost overwhelming sense of relief. The flight had been the longest of her life, fraught with a strange mix of anger, guilt, and triumph. As the doors opened and the plane began to deplane, Cassandra gathered her belongings, preparing to exit. She glanced once more at Ingrid, who stood by the galley, hands clasped before her. The attendant looked broken, staring into the distance with hollow eyes. Some of the other crew members exchanged tight-lipped looks, bitterness and disappointment etched into their features. Stepping off the aircraft, Cassandra was met by a senior Emirates representative, flanked by security and a handful of staff. She was whisked into a private lounge where she was offered refreshments and given a formal apology. David Robinson himself had flown in from the airline's local headquarters to smooth things over. "Miss Hamilton, on behalf of Emirates, I extend our deepest apologies," David said. "The behavior you experienced was inexcusable. We've relieved the individuals involved of their duties, pending a thorough investigation. We value your patronage and want to assure you this is not indicative of our brand values." Cassandra nodded, feeling exhaustion weigh on her. "Thank you, Mr. Robinson. I trust you'll handle the investigation fairly." "We will. We'd also like to offer you a full refund of your ticket, plus a credit for future flights. Additionally, we'll issue a public statement of apology if you wish." Cassandra inhaled deeply, crossing her arms. "I'd like to discuss that statement with my PR team. I won't stand for casual racism, and I want the world to know that Emirates took appropriate action. But let's do this carefully. I'm not out to ruin your airline. I just want accountability." David agreed, relief washing over his features. They exchanged contact information and parted ways. Stepping into the warm Dubai air, Cassandra breathed in, grateful to be off that plane. A private car sent by her business associates awaited her. She sank into the plush back seat, finally feeling some semblance of peace. Yet life has a funny way of balancing scales. While Cassandra had emerged victorious in the battle against the cabin crew's prejudice, a new crisis was brewing in her professional life, one that would bring its own brand of karmic retribution. The following day, Cassandra arrived at the luxurious offices of Aurora Investments, a major Middle Eastern venture capital firm with which she was set to finalize a multi-billion-dollar funding deal. The building, an architectural marvel, sparkled against the Dubai skyline, a symbol of power and wealth. Inside, Cassandra was greeted cordially, offered a seat in the marble-floored reception area. She noticed the tension in the air. Assistants rushed about, phone calls took on hushed tones, and a sense of urgency clung to every moment. Finally, Yusuf Al-Aurora, the head of the firm, emerged to greet her. Unlike his usual warm, jovial self, he seemed distant, almost cold. "Miss Hamilton," he said, offering a polite bow. "It's a pleasure to see you again. Unfortunately, we must speak about a pressing matter before we proceed with our negotiations." Cassandra frowned. "Of course. Is everything all right?" "I'm afraid not," Yusuf replied gravely. "It has come to my attention that your company, Everglow Tech, has been implicated in a data breach that compromised the privacy of multiple high-profile clients." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Reports indicate that sensitive financial data might have been leaked to unauthorized entities." A chill ran through Cassandra. "That's impossible," she said, her voice tight. "We maintain the highest security standards." Yusuf nodded. "So I believed as well, but we received the report from a reputable cyber forensics firm. We've also had direct communication from some of our clients who claim their data was accessed. This places our potential deal in jeopardy. We cannot proceed until these allegations are resolved." Cassandra's heart pounded. "I assure you, Mr. Al-Aurora, I will get to the bottom of this immediately. There must be some mistake." He offered a polite, tight smile. "I hope you do, Miss Hamilton, because until then, our negotiations must be put on hold. I cannot in good conscience invest billions into a tech security firm that can't secure its own data." Cassandra felt as if the ground had disappeared from beneath her feet. She had flown all this way for what she believed was a guaranteed deal, a culmination of months of negotiation. Now it seemed like everything was unraveling. The shadow of scandal threatened not just the deal, but her company's reputation. Trying to keep her composure, she nodded. "I understand. I'll have my team conduct an immediate investigation. May I request some time to clarify this situation?" Yusuf inclined his head. "You have 1 week, Miss Hamilton. After that, our board will need to move on." She swallowed hard. "I understand." As Yusuf turned and walked away, Cassandra stood alone in the opulent reception area, her mind racing. Just a day after she'd wielded her power to have an entire cabin crew fired, she now found herself at the mercy of forces beyond her control. Karma, it seemed, had arrived swiftly, and with a vengeance. Dazed and disheartened, Cassandra retreated to her hotel suite at the Burj Al Arab, one of the most luxurious hotels in the world. She had chosen it to reflect the magnitude of her business deal, a silent statement of success. Now the grandeur of her surroundings did little to soothe her nerves. Her phone buzzed incessantly with messages from her legal team, board members, and press inquiries. It seemed that word of the data breach had already started to leak, ironically enough. In the span of less than 24 hours, Cassandra had gone from triumphant victor in a discrimination battle to embattled CEO facing a corporate crisis. She gathered her top executives on a video conference call. Their faces appeared in small windows on her tablet screen, each one showing concern. "Listen up," Cassandra began, her voice a combination of command and controlled panic. "We're facing allegations of a security breach that may halt our deal with Aurora Investments. I need a full forensic audit, starting immediately. Work with our cybersecurity division, pull logs, track any unauthorized access, interview staff. I want a preliminary report in 24 hours. Her CFO, Maria, nodded solemnly. "We're on it. We've already begun combing through the server logs." VP of Operations Darren spoke up next. "Is there any chance this is a smear campaign by a competitor? The timing is too suspicious, especially with your trip to Dubai." Cassandra considered it. "It's possible, but until we have proof, we can't dismiss the possibility of a genuine breach. Make no mistake, if it's real, it's catastrophic." Her chief legal officer, Paula, interjected. "We also have to handle the PR aspect. Investors are spooked. We have an emergency press statement drafted, but we need your approval." Cassandra rubbed her temples. "Send it to me. Let's emphasize that we're investigating rigorously and that we have no confirmation of a breach yet. Minimize speculation." The call ended with a flurry of tasks assigned, and Cassandra sat back in her seat. Her mind drifted to the events on the plane just a day prior. She couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that she was being punished by fate. She thought about Ingrid's tearful confession, the entire crew's abrupt firing, and the swift downfall of her own best-laid plans. Had she acted too harshly? Perhaps. But bigotry deserved to be called out. She couldn't regret defending herself. Still, the whiplash of cosmic justice was undeniable. The next week was an emotional roller coaster. Cassandra and her team worked around the clock, delving into every corner of Everglow Tech's infrastructure to determine the source of the alleged breach. Sleep was a luxury Cassandra could ill afford, especially as the clock ticked toward Yusuf al-Aurora's deadline. On the 6th day, they found it. A rogue employee in the European division had sold partial access to the system for personal gain. The infiltration was limited but damaging enough to compromise key client data. With proof in hand, Cassandra immediately fired the employee and turned over all evidence to law enforcement. She flew back to Yusuf's office, armed with a thick dossier of forensic reports and a heartfelt apology. Over a tense meeting, she showed him how the breach occurred, the swift action taken, and the safeguards she had now implemented to prevent any future incidents. Yusuf listened, his face impassive. Finally, after hours of discussion, he nodded. "Miss Hamilton, your transparency and quick response have reassured us. Aurora Investments will proceed with the deal, contingent on a final review from our own cybersecurity experts." Relief flooded Cassandra's entire being. She offered a grateful smile. "Thank you, Mr. Al-Aurora. You won't regret this partnership." Walking out of Aurora Investments, Cassandra felt a renewed appreciation for the fragility of success. She realized that power, influence, and wealth could shift in a heartbeat, and she understood more than ever the concept of accountability, both for those who discriminate and for those who hold power. At the airport, ready to return home, Cassandra encountered one last twist. She noticed a woman leaning against a pillar in the terminal, wearing a plain, unremarkable dress. It was Ingrid. Their eyes locked and Ingrid approached timidly. "What are you doing here?" Cassandra asked, genuinely surprised. Ingrid hesitated, tears welling in her eyes yet again. I'm heading back to Germany. My father's sick. I was let go immediately, just as you demanded." She paused, her gaze dropping to the floor. "I don't blame you for what happened. I messed up. You were right." Cassandra's heart twinged with guilt. "I'm sorry about your father," she managed. "I hope you find a new opportunity." Ingrid offered a sad smile. "I will. This has been a big wake-up call. I'm ashamed of the biases I carried. It took losing my job to realize how destructive they can be." Unsure of what else to say, Cassandra reached into her bag and pulled out a business card. She scribbled her personal assistant's phone number on the back. "Reach out if you need help finding new work. I have connections in hospitality. People can change. If you're sincere, maybe this is your path to a better self. Ingrid, eyes glimmering with tears, nodded. Thank you. They parted ways, both weighed down by the consequences of their encounter, but also buoyed by a hint of redemption. And so ends a journey that began at 30,000 feet, with a black CEO denied her rightful meal and swiftly escalated into a showdown of pride, prejudice, and power. Cassandra Hamilton emerged from that turbulent flight stronger, yet humbled by the swift hand of karma that threatened her life's work. The cabin crew who once embodied disrespect tasted the sting of immediate consequences. Meanwhile, Cassandra was forced to face her own moment of reckoning as a data breach imperiled her empire. In the end, she negotiated her greatest deal and discovered a renewed resolve to wield her influence more responsibly. If you found value and inspiration in Cassandra's story, a tale of fighting discrimination, learning from mistakes, and ultimately forging a path toward redemption, please show your support. Like, share, and subscribe to our channel so we can continue bringing you stories that spark conversations, challenge perspectives, and remind us all of our power to change the world. Thank you for watching.